Space forensics, that's right. What happens if you create bloodstain patterns in space or in zero G? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. And you can see where we're at. Houston, we have an announcement. So I'm here at Johnson Space Center, and what am I rambling on about? Well, recently there was an article, this one, that was published in Forensic Science International, specifically discussing fluid dynamics of bloodstain patterns and microgravity. But wait, who's the first author on that report? Oh my God, that's right, it's me. One of my first articles from my PhD research in Forensic Science International, and that's exactly what we were looking at, is bloodstain pattern analysis in microgravity or in space, in zero G. What does the absence of gravity tell us here on Earth about how bloodstain patterns are formed? Well, the findings were pretty fascinating.
Y'all, I would like to point out that the tins that they have right there here in the moon rock exhibit are the same kind of tins that we use to fume super glue and find fingerprints. So is NASA trying to find fingerprints on the moon? So we are at the Johnson Space Center's training center, and this is where actual astronauts come to do all their training and practical exercises and learning how to operate in zero gravity.
So here's the question, what do bloodstains actually look like in space? Well, to really understand this, we have to go back to a conversation I had with my advisor, and I had this crazy idea that I wanted to do a thought experiment on what bloodstains would manifest like in space. So I started cold emailing NASA researchers and pulling every literature review I could, and I ended up getting in touch with a guy named Dr. George Panelos. Now, George is a space medicine researcher who has been doing research in partnership with NASA and University of Louisville for decades. And he says, a question to me that will forever be incredibly cool: how would you conduct your research? Now, to understand that, you have to understand that I'm a broke researcher, so I had no money to afford this, but it was a fun thought experiment. So this was a really cool question because it forced me to consider my research at bare bones. And so I kind of, on the back of a napkin, diagrammed out how I would do it. So we actually conducted a zero G bloodstain pattern research for the first time.
This is the actual experimentation video taken from on board our parabolic aircraft, or it's our special laboratory that can induce free fall and microgravity. In it, we are projecting our fake blood simulant that has the same relative density onto a target card. We replicate this same experiment in the 1G environment here on Earth, and we compare these stains' shapes and sizes to understand the accuracy of that angle of impact. I'll put together a more in-depth video that dissects this entire experiment and explains some of the foundational science.
You see, my hypothesis going into this was that when you removed gravity, the angle of impact and the area of origin calculations of bloodstain patterns would be more accurate, because here on Earth, gravity and air drag affect how bloodstains fly through air and eventually make bloodstain patterns. But that wasn't at all what happened. When we removed gravity as a factor, surface tension and cohesion became the predominant forces. This actually ended up inhibiting the inertial spread of those blood drops, and thus inhibiting the full spread. So where my hypothesis was that it was going to be more accurate because there was no gravity, It was quite the opposite. It was less accurate. And that's the cool thing about science is you can go in with a hypothesis, but that negative hypothesis might be what's true.
Conducting novel science like this is what invigorates me, and it's exciting. It is looking forward to the future of science and starting with those foundational basic questions, like what does blood do in space?
Thanks for joining me today here at Johnson Space Center. If you like today's content, hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help a small channel like ours, and I know Bonesworth really appreciates it. For future content, we're gonna keep doing cool stuff like this. I love going out into the field and looking at unique aspects of forensic science and how I can bring it to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Detective Zack. Bonesworth is back home in Atlanta. Until next time, stay curious. So one of the cool things about Space Center Houston is it's also a nature preserve. Those are prize-winning steers, or longhorns. They're like big cattle that have really long horns. We don't have them in Georgia.